I come up in New York when it was curated by the doorman or the door girl, the door person, right? They had to select you, right?
Yeah.
No matter how much money you had, there's no way you're going to buy a bottle, buy your way in. And so I always think about like, man, what was New York City like during Studio 54 days, right? And I think you guys did a really great job of showing that.
What's wild is that a lot of these stories, all these stories are secondhand, right? Because Neil died in the 80s. And so like all of this stuff is coming from interviews that Tim did and all of this research. But the funny thing is during that time, everybody was partying. And so everybody has a completely different story of even the same exact thing that they were in the same room for. And so you're like, what really happened?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what gives us a little bit more license to be like, here's our version of this. And because this is the most fun version. And so it's like, there's a lot of stuff that that stayed in the room that maybe never will ever see the light of day nowadays.
What's up, everyone? It's your boy, Mike Muse. Welcome to the Conversation, the Mike Muse Show. I am so excited to be in conversation with my next guest. This is my first time meeting him. I'm going to do some unorthodox moves. I usually wait to bring in my guests after I hype them up so much. But his energy is so good and is so great. And I have been a fan of his for a while. I really have enjoyed his acting ability. But I really had the chance to get a sneak peek of why he is here for the movie Spinning Gold. And I have heard about Spinning Gold for years. And so I'm so excited that it's finally coming to the big screen. But I have the coolest cat in the room right now, Jeremy Jordan. What's happening, man?
It's only because I'm wearing this cool jacket.
Well, the jacket is cool, but is your energy always this relaxed and chill?
Yeah, I think so. It's so funny because like I come off like when people see me on films and in Broadway shows and stuff. Like I conserve my energy. I think I've learned just from doing a lot of theater to like conserve your energy so that you can put 1,000,000% of it into your performances. And so like I've just kind of been chilled out, I guess. I
think we have that same vibe. I said this publicly too. I was at Disney World over the weekend. So I have a partnership with Disney, and I had to do a big keynote speech, right? And for me, I wanted to be off in the wings, right, so I can preserve my energy.
Yeah.
So that when I did step out into that stage and having to do the Socratic method in front of a large room at Disney, you want to make sure your energy is conserved. And so I love that you kind of have that same mindset.
Man. You just take like that breath off stage and just kind of like center yourself. And like people want to like talk about it and hype you up back. So I was like, I'm good.
Yeah. Is that hard. The Corpus Christi in you?
Is it the Corpus Christi in me? I don't know. Maybe. I mean, I've always been like a quiet person, kind of introverted when I was a kid. And so like I've always been like an observer more than a interactor. And so I've just always kind of had that sort of like quiet, taking everything in kind of energy. And I've learned as I've gotten older and become, more of a public figure to channel that into, energy, and instead of going all inward, I can kind of project it outward better now. But I've always been that sort of quiet type, My little brother growing up, he was always the like maniac who was just running around getting into trouble, and I was like, just a quiet, good kid.
Yeah. You've been the good guys, Jeremy. So then I'm interested now about that, as a kid and quiet and introvert, right? Like, so did you know early on you wanted to be an actor? And then is that the way you communicated to people? Like, how did that click?
No, I think I was always like a kind of a nerd. So I was like really into computers and I was really into technology. And that's what I thought I wanted to do. And even all the way up into high school, like I went to these big camps for like computers and technology, and I figured out that those weren't my people. Not that I had anything, I just didn't connect with them. And I'd always been in choir because I always liked to sing, and it was kind of my outlet. And I was like, maybe I can do something with singing. And I started to realize that if I was a character on stage, I could sort of try out different other ways other than just my quiet self, and I really started to open up in that way. I could allow myself to open up when I'm in front of the camera or on stage, and it was exciting to me because I got to sort of like test the waters without actually putting myself and making my own Jeremy vulnerable. It was this character that was being vulnerable. It was this character that was like getting to do these all wild crazy things, and I could always revert back to my skin and kind of sink sink back, and that's kind of what I fell in love with it. It's kind of weird way of saying it, but
No, you actually answered my question. You said no originally, but you actually, as you started checking it out, you actually did use acting as a way to kind of communicate and try new characters, new voices, be more extroverted, right?
Yeah.
We'll always hear sometimes actors talk about like sometimes how hard it is for a character to leave them. But with you, since you're trying out new characters in different ways, I'm wondering, do you take a piece of the character with you as you go?
No, I'm not really of the method school. You know, I think for me, and honestly, and I have a 3-year-old daughter, I think kids are the best actors because they like very naturally, without any sort of preconception or expectations, they just pretend. And I mean, we're just playing pretend. Let's be honest. Like, I'm pretending to be this person. I'm clearly know that I'm not this person. So it's like you got to lean into that. And for me, like, one of the tricks that I've learned to use is like kind of outside in. So I will sort of like, if I having trouble getting into a character, he's different than me, I'll, figure out what his body is like and where does he hold his tension, like how does his face feel, and you kind of like go outside in. So you get your body kind of there, and then you kind of can lock in that direction. And when you do that, you kind of just shake it off and you're back to you.
Yeah. Well, how was that in relationship to being on the stage? Because obviously we're talking about a film. We're about to talk about a film that you're in, but you really have a strong presence in the Broadway community, which I love, right? You got your start with Rock of Ages, which was absolutely amazing. I love that musical.
I was a swing.
Yeah, then you went on to get the Tony nomination for Newsies, right? And
that's
so
right.
with so much energy and the physicality that you just mentioned, how does that transfer on the Broadway stage versus like on the film or television? But you covered all the gamuts.
Well, I think on Broadway it's even more crucial because you're telling your story with your whole body on stage. You don't have a lens to zoom into your face. They say like on film you tell a story with your eyes, but on Broadway you have to use your whole body. Yeah. And so like you really have to lock into whatever all of that sort of idiosyncrasies are of the character. And so it's way more important, I think, then, and you can, I guess, fake it even a little bit easier on film sometimes. Although, it's weird to say that. You're like, oh yeah, I'm faking it, but it's true. It's called acting. Yeah. You are faking it. It's just about to the degree of like how you can, insert your own emotional life within that moment. And sometimes you can get lost for sure, but I tend to keep a little bit of a barrier. It's a little bit of a wall, and I'm still working on it. To be honest, I'm not perfect by any means. Like I still find myself like being like, I need to lean in a little bit more.
But I mean, I think that's a beauty of being human, right? And acknowledging the fact of like we are perfectly imperfect, right? Yeah. And so even when we talk about, democracy, right? It's always like, we're always working to form a more perfect union, right? Like nothing is perfect, but we're always in process of that formation of finding that thing. As I'm talking and I'm actually thinking about the movie Spinning Gold, audience, I had the chance to see it, and it's an incredible film. So I just want to say congratulations to you when it comes to that. Audience, if you're not familiar with the story of Spinning Gold, right? It is from the producer Neil Bogart, who founded Casablanca Records, and has everyone from Bill Withers that he's founded, from Gladys Knight, from The Kiss to Donna Summers to Village People, you name it. So it's a very musical. I would say it's interesting how I would describe Spinning Gold. I'll be curious to get your take on Spinning Gold. I wouldn't necessarily call it a musical, as I would say, as it is more of a lyrical movie, right?
Yeah.
With a lot of fluidity and a lot of movements, right? A lot of musical numbers, but not a musical whatsoever.
Yeah, you're getting pieces of these songs that and what's kind of cool is that you're, all these artists that we all know, we know all these hits that we're doing in the movie, but we get like early glimpses of that song before it hits. We see the first version of Love to Love You. We like hear Ain't No Sunshine when he first comes in and sings it in a club, it's cool like that we kind of see the developmental process of this, and then it just moves on. And Neil, the character that I play, he was often described like as a perpetual motion machine, like he just never stopped. And the movie kind of goes along that same line. So it's just on the next, and then there's barriers that get formed. But in terms of the musical quality of it, it's I think it's kind of a hybrid, because it's not a true musical because, we don't really burst in a song, but it doesn't feel like a normal movie with music that you're just watching the performances. It feels somewhere in between. And I think what's really cool is the movie is told from Neil's perspective. And so he is a showman, and he tends to sometimes, spin things, for lack of a better word, but the movie's called Spinning Gold, and he can kind of he since he gets to tell his own story, he can tell it in a way that's entertaining and more fun, and maybe kind of gets to create his own endings to things, and there's truth in almost all of it, but you're not really sure what's being embellished and like where the line is, and I think it's kind of fun to watch it with that mindset.
Now that we're talking about this, I think you were the perfect person to be cast for this movie. Now that we're talking about the physicality nature of how you approach a character, right? And we think about your background on the Broadway stage and with the School of Rock School of Ages, right?
Rock of Ages,
right? Like Rock of Ages. Lots to remember, Jeremy. Yeah,
that's all good.
Like with the Rock of Ages, right? And the motion, because I think your character and you keep the fluidity of the movie going. That goes between that hybrid of a musical as is much discussing the music. And when you come on, it's very performative in nature, right?
Yeah.
And how you open up the movie, right?
Yeah,
And
like he opens up the movie and you're like, oh, this is a musical. And then you cut to my character narrating. He's like, I mean, it's not really how it happened.
Yeah.
But it's more fun to tell it that way.
It is.
And so it kind of sets you up for like, what am I in for?
Yeah, but you get the whole physical movement both of like motion of the spinning, i.e. spinning of a story. And then you actually get the physicality of the actual spinning little of itself. But even those moments where you chime in and do some duets with, I'm thinking about the Gladys Knight scene, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, yo, you guys actually were singing. I see why it kind of came from.
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, what was really cool about this process is that, because I am a singer, Tim like started writing things in the script. Like that Gladys Knight scene wasn't originally in the script the way it was, where we're just like sitting at the piano kind of tooling Midnight Train to Georgia together and kind of figuring out how the song goes. It was like, that was like a phone call, but because I can do the, singing a little bit, he just let me and Letticy, who is, royalty, sit down and just riff, and we improv that whole scene.
That was all improv?
Yeah. So a couple days before, he gave me the sheet. I got the sheet music, and kind of, I don't play piano very well, but I could sort of kind of fake it. And we just sat there and sort of talked, and there was like a sort of guideline of what we were going to be talking about. But then when we started singing, and we just started going, they kept the camera rolling, and we just rewrote Midnight Train to Georgia, quote unquote, because.
Don't give too much of it away.
Okay, I don't want to give it away.
No. Don't give too much.
Right, fine.
We want to tease a little bit, Jeremy.
All right, yeah.
But that's the beauty of this, right? Like, audience, you think you know the stories and you don't, right? You think you know the story of Gladys Knight and the Pips. You think you know the story of Kiss, right? You think you know the story of the Village People. When I learned through this movie the actual rules were the Village People, it was so many no ways. Like, I kept saying, no way.
I know.
But this, you know what? So, and I can talk to...
that has to do with Neil being a visionary.
Yeah.
Like, he was a visionary because we see these things and we see the final result, but then when you look at where it started, you're like, how did that even come close to getting from point A to point B? It's because he could see it, and he had to like sometimes will it into existence.
Yeah. But this is why I've actually really enjoyed this movie, and my audience knows I'm very cynical about movies.
Okay.
And I will pull a movie apart. But I love the social construct of movies and kind of what it is. And I kind of went in knowing I wanted to see it because I've known Tim for a while, and I love the story and his father and everything we're talking about.
Yeah.
But there was a part of it I was like, okay, but I know the story of these people, and so I'm like, how much more will I be able to learn?
Yeah.
Right?
What am I really gonna get?
What I'm gonna get, and I swear, almost in every scene, I was like, no way, right? It was like, no way entering the scene, and then coming out of it, I was like, yo, that is so cool. And I kept going on this journey with this of like, so audience, you will go on the journey of discovery. Even if you think you are a movie aficionado, a music aficionado, right? You're gonna journey into Donna Summers. How much of this did you know about Donna Summers?
I didn't know any of the Donna Summers stuff. Like, there just the fact that
don't give too much away, Jeremy.
No, and Donna Summer was not Donna Summer
at all.
Yeah, she essentially was, created but she always had the voice, and that's what he heard. He heard her on like a really random demo that would have otherwise never gotten anywhere, and he just could hear something, and he's like, I have to find that voice. And then he found the voice, and it was not what he expected. So he's like, how do I make the voice and the face and the energy match what I feel when I hear that voice? And it was a whole process, and it was hard, and it took a toll on both of them, and eventually became this huge thing. But it's kind of crazy how heavy-handed he was in the creation of some of these artists.
It made me want to think about like Studio 54, right? Like I think everyone has their New York story. An audience, if you don't live in New York, you have your story of your city when your city was thriving, right?
Sure.
And so, I came into this New York City when like club life was epic, right?
Yeah.
And we didn't have bottle service, right? I think bottle service completely ruined the nightlife experience.
Yeah.
So I come up in New York when it was curated by the doorman or the door girl or the door person, right? They had to select you, right?
Yeah.
And no matter how much money you had, there's no way you're gonna buy a bottle buy your way in. And so I always think about like, man, what was New York City like during Studio 54 days, right? And I think you guys did a really great job of showing that.
What's wild is that a lot of these stories, all these stories are secondhand, right? Because Neil died in the 80s, and so like all of this stuff is coming from interviews that Tim did and all of this research. But the funny thing is, during that time, everybody was partying. And so everybody has a completely different story of even the same exact thing that they were in the same room for. And so you're like, what really happened?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what gives us a little bit more license to be like, here's our version of this. And because this is the most fun version. And so it's like, there's a lot of stuff that stayed in the room that maybe never will ever see the light of day. Nowadays everything is recorded and cataloged in social media.
Yeah.
So.
But I also too think this is a story, but I love how you guys took license and liberty with some of the story. You do qualify that, right? And so that is kind of out there like in the open.
Yeah.
But it gives for me a chance, a couple of takeaways I was just thinking about is just the sheer determination, right? And like betting on self.
Yeah.
The character you're playing is a real person, Neil, and it was about betting on yourself.
Yeah.
Like talk about what that means for you, just as Jeremy Jordan, right?
Yeah.
And what you learned,
right.
From Neil.
It means a lot. I mean, it definitely means a lot to me because I'm like, your average sort of masochistic actor where I'm like, hire me, help me, I'm very sensitive, I'm very emotional kind of a person. And it takes guts and takes like a certain tenacity to will yourself like Neil did, just through sheer determination and knowledge that you have what it takes to become successful. And sometimes it's good to be reminded that we kind of all have something like that within ourselves. And if we believe really strongly in the things that we know we're good at and can do, that, the possibilities can be pretty incredible. Now, was Neil perfect in any way? No, I mean, he made a lot of enemies and he burned some bridges on the way there, but he did not stop until he reached the peak. And then once he got there, the success was just pouring down on. I mean, it was kind of amazing. But any other person and most other people would have given up, when they had death threats or when they were millions, billions of dollars in debt. Like, it was just like, but he said, no, like, let's just, he was like the king of fake it till you make it. Yeah. And he wasn't really faking it because he knew what he was talking about. He just had to wait for everybody else to catch up because he was like 5 steps ahead. And I think that we all have some sort of thing that, a knowledge of our own potential and knowledge of potential of the people that we love and we can sort of support. And the more that you foster that sort of perseverance within yourself or within the people that you love, the more success you're going to have or they're going to have and so forth. And I think this movie really shows that. And it's unfortunate because there's a time aspect to the movie. Yeah. It's all about wanting more time because he just didn't have it enough on this world. He died pretty young and it's pretty amazing to think about where he would be if he'd still be alive today or had lived much longer. And what's really special, I think, about the movie is that it's created by his son and his other son, Evan Bogart, did a lot of the music, and his other son, Brad, produced it. Like, it was a family effort, and they created this beautiful kind of memorial to their father and a figure that might have otherwise been lost, and has a really, I think, really special story to tell.
I love the framing of where we landed and just the note of needing more time. You know, that was just such a recurring line in the movie that stuck out to me a lot, right?
Yeah.
And I think we all sometimes have this moment of, I just need more time. If I can only have more time.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes the lesson I took away is, you know, how do you make the best use of the time that you have?
Yeah. How do you make the best use of the time you have? Absolutely.
Jeremy, I couldn't think of a better way to end the interview because
Thank you.
if we only had more time.
Hey, next time.
Next time.
There you go.
Jim, congratulations, man, on all
Thank
your
you.
success and your portrayal of this movie that you did. It was absolutely amazing. You were fun to watch on the screen.
All right, I'll take that. Yeah, I love that.
Your movements were very lyrical, and I'm rooting for you, my guy.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
No problem, man. Until next time, folks. Peace.